Over the course of the last 5+ years, we have done hundreds and hundreds of episodes of The Big Impact. I believe the one you're about to watch is the most important episode we've ever done, as it provides hope and a solution for families struggling with strategies for taking back control over the technology that has begun to dominate our lives and drive families into different directions. Today, we've got a solution, so stick around. There is a small degree of irony leading into the conversation I'm about to have because my guest and I are both connecting using all sorts of devices, right? And his area of expertise is gaining back control over our devices. Technology is overwhelming our world, our families, our culture, every aspect of all of it, including kind of our minds and in some cases our sleep habits. And so Joey Odom is our special guest here on The Big Impact. And Joey, one of the things that is most intrigues me is the degree of study that you've done on all of this. So at the very outset, let me say thank you for doing all that and welcome in. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Bill. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to talk today.
I first came in contact or was made aware of what you're doing as part of a 2-day long symposium on a number of different topics. And I was just watching the live stream with a couple pastors from my church, and everybody who was presenting was speaking in either 9 or 18-minute increments, kind of like a Christian TED Talk series. And up comes this guy with long hair, and he's got 9 minutes to tell us all about the dangers of technology. And about 3 minutes in, I was on the edge of my seat, and I was like, I've got to talk to this guy. So can you kind of give our audience an idea of where we're headed, the research you've done, and why all of this discussion about intentionally taking back control over technology, why it matters?
Yeah, for sure. And I do have long hair, and so because I look a little bit like Jesus, I'm supposed to speak in some parables. So I'll start with the parable from my own story, a real life story, and it's when my son was 5 years old. And my son is 15 now. He's the greatest kid in the world. And at 5 years old, he was playing his first soccer season, and he was there's always a kid on the team who's not scored a goal. The last one, everybody scored except for this one. So that was my son, Harrison. So Harrison had not scored a goal all season, and so here we are Saturday afternoon sitting on the sidelines, just like we had many Saturdays before. And all of a sudden, Bill, this magical moment arises. And, you almost think back in cinematic terms, slow motion, cue the dramatic music. Harrison rears back his leg. He kicks the soccer ball. It goes into the back of the net, and he scores his first goal. And it's this moment of just jubilation. Everybody's excited. The crowd goes wild because it's, the last kid on the team to score a goal. His coach lifts him up. And what does the 5-year-old boy do when he scores his first soccer goal? He looks to the sidelines to have this beautiful moment with me, with Dad, for us to lock eyes and him to see on my face that I saw it and that I'm proud of him, which what a great moment, except the fact that I missed that entire scene, that I didn't see any of it because I was looking down at my phone. And my wife nudges me and she said, Harrison just scored his first soccer goal. He looked to see you and you weren't looking. And that's a moment for me that I've told that story a lot of times, and I still, every single time I tell it, I feel the emotion rise in me because I think about that moment I missed. And then the good thing is Harrison says he doesn't remember that moment, so I hopefully won't have a therapy bill to pay for someday for that. But he missed the moment. And that was a seminal moment for me. That was a moment for me where I realized something's wrong here, and we can go, and I do want to go into all the science and all the stats, but this is a felt need. You don't need to convince me at that moment that that my all the stats that I'm going to go through here, I don't need to be convinced that. I just know I missed my son's soccer goal. So we're on a mission right now to make sure that other moms and dads don't have to tell that same story. So that's where I'll begin, and we can probably dissect from there. And I think the need, like I said, is something that everybody feels. This has overtaken us very, very quickly. And so in the last 15 years, we've had smartphones have gone from zero, basically the iPhone that didn't exist till about 15 years ago. And all of a sudden it's indoctrinated in every part of our lives. And we're just too early on here to understand its effects on us. And so as we're starting to see some of the science come out, we're starting to realize, okay, something's wrong here. And so we're going to swing this pendulum back here. But at this moment, and we see, you said you were speaking about the dangers of technology and smartphones. I'll actually reframe that if that's okay. And just the hopefulness that we have and what we can do about it. And yes, it's now we've taken some punches in the gut and we've taken punches in the face, but now we know what the battle is and now we know how to handle it. And that's what this message is. It's a message of hopefulness on how we can kind of reclaim and reshape that relationship with our technology.
You know, the older I get, Joey, the more I have to remind myself that not every problem is just a problem for kids, right? Some of these things are multi-generational. I can recall a few years ago, we were going on a cruise. We didn't sign up for the international plan, which meant my phone was going to be nothing more than a music MP3 player,
right,
during that time. And I found myself for the first couple days constantly reaching for my pocket because I even had like phantom vibration going on my left thigh. It's stuck with me all of these years later. And for anybody who's listening who says, I don't know why these guys are wasting all their time and energy on this for, might I just encourage you all to give a try to removing your device for a full day and doing the same for the other members of your family and see how people behave, right? Because there's some chemical dependency that comes from the rush that's associated with all this.
There is, and the neat thing is that there's absolutely some chemical. There are dopamine hits left and right that we get from that, and so, but we believe, and this is science is proving this out, and a lot of what we talk about comes from a brilliant researcher named Dr. Maxi Heitmeyer. He's at the London School of Economics. And he talks about the phenomenon that we experience with our phones. He says it doesn't follow the traditional characteristics of addiction. Now, there are some people who are truly there is an actual addiction here. It actually looks a little bit more like compulsion, or it looks even more like habit. And so we've developed a habit over the last 15 years, and it's really related to our relationship with our phone. And in that, we have our phone with us all the time. 91% of us have our phones within arm's reach. We don't have to move our feet 24 hours a day to reach our phone. We don't have a relationship with anything else like that, except maybe if we wear a watch or something like that, which is just for utility for the most part. So we've developed this relationship. And again, it's just because we've got this really cool, shiny thing that's awesome and that does a lot of cool stuff that we couldn't do before, or a lot of cool stuff that we could do before, but we'd have to wait for it or we'd have to go to it. Where here, it's all right here for us. So that 91%, that's the relationship we need to look at. And what we're looking to do is when we change our relationship with our phone, we will change our relationship with everyone around us, including ourselves. And so that's the real key here, is that it's impacting our relationships. It wouldn't be that big of a deal. I mean, if it weren't impacting other things. I wear a shirt, probably 91% of the time, right? But that's not a problem because it's not getting in the way of anything else, right? But because we have this with us all the time, that's where it's causing the impact. And so if we get to a place where we understand the difference between addiction and habit, and maybe we're talking semantics here, but here's why I think it's important. When something is an addiction, two things happen. A lot of things happen, but two things happen. One of them is you completely abstain from the thing. You have to get rid of it. An alcoholic can't just say like, okay, I'm going to be good Monday to Thursday, but I'm going to be, Thursday, Friday to Sunday, I'm going to go ahead and drink. No. You have to abstain. You have to be completely rid of that thing. And then the other thing is you effectively lose agency. What's the first thing? You are powerless over this thing, right? So that you admit powerlessness. In this case, it's totally different. We're still going to use our phones. We're not in any way suggesting for anybody to go back to smartphones. We actually think we just need to look at the relationship we have with the current one. That's one. And the second thing, I think this is most important, and the difference between addiction and habit is that we have agency over it. So we have power over that. James Clear in the book Atomic Habits talks about the fact that he says that most of us think we're lazy when we're not getting the results we want, but we actually just lack an environment and a system. And that's what we're building people towards, is you're really just a good environment and system away from being a lot better at this thing that seems really hard, a lot better at that than we think we are.
So when we start to think about the impact or the obstruction that technology can present, like you said, the shirt's not a problem and it's with you everywhere. Why is the phone?
Right.
You made a statement during your presentation in that symposium that I was referring to that has stuck with me, and it was, and I'll paraphrase it because I don't have the direct quote, but it was, when I have this device in my hand, there are 300 plus million people who can reach me.
Yeah.
If I set it down, you can reach me and you're more important than all of them. What are we sending message-wise to our friends, family, loved ones, if we are buried in the screen instead of into eye contact and conversation?
Yeah, a couple different directions there. The first one, maybe just back to the felt need, and then I'll go into some stats. We all know this. Any of us that are married, any of us that have given this message or received this message, or any of us are parents. I'll talk about my 13-year-old daughter. So my 13-year-old daughter, it's very hard to be a 13-year-old girl, right? I mean, this is challenging. You're in a world of comparison traps. You're experiencing a bunch of hormones that are just moving you every which way, and it's really, really challenging. You feel like you're alone, and so it's, for my daughter to come open up on something, that can be a rare instance. And when she does, it's very, very meaningful. So I just want you to imagine if she did that. Let's say she came home and she said, "Dad, I want to talk to you about something." And I say, "Yeah." We sit down, sit on the couch. And then while she's opening up, all it takes, Bill, is one little glance at my phone. And what has that done? That has absolutely killed every bit of vulnerability that she's willing to give in that moment. It's killed every bit of intimacy in that moment. And that moment is totally gone. But it's not just for then. That is a future intimacy killer. In her brain has just wired neural pathways to say that I can't open up and be vulnerable to Dad. And that's brutal. That thought alone. And all it takes is one glance. We all know that because we felt that way as well. If you're actually being vulnerable, vulnerability is exposing your underbelly and giving somebody the opportunity to stab you. That's what vulnerability is. Vulnerability is by definition uncomfortable and painful. And so when you turn your underbelly to somebody and then they actually stab you, you're not going to be vulnerable. You're not going to show them your underbelly again. And so that moment, that can kill it with my daughter in that moment. So that's the felt need. That's the everyday reality of that. And all of us are doing that at all times for a bunch of different rationalizations. We're rationalizing this behavior. No, it was an important. My daughter doesn't know if that was if my brother sent me a funny text. She doesn't know if that was the president of the United States. She doesn't know if that was an important. It doesn't matter what it was. All she knows is that it hurt her at that moment. So that's one, is the felt need. The second one is there is an epidemic, somewhat related to this. There's an epidemic of teenage unhappiness in the country right now. And there's studies again, over and over and over coming out about this epidemic of teenage unhappiness. And it is related. All of them tie it back to the ubiquity of smartphones and when smartphones came available. So you have a bunch of teenagers, 13, 14, 15. The iPhone came out 15 years ago, and they're all experiencing peak levels of unhappiness. It is easy to trace a lot of that, and a lot of that is attributed to social media, body comparison, where teenage girls are comparing themselves to a bunch of airbrushed models that aren't even real to begin with. They're comparing themselves. But let's take it back a little bit further. This is a generation of kids who has grown up with parents looking at screens instead of into their eyes. And that's a big problem. And so what happens then? Because whenever someone looks in your eyes, you are receiving value from them. You're getting eye contact from that. And they talk about that even from a very young age when children are breastfeeding and getting bottles, that eye contact is so formative. And so you have a foundational sense of value as a child when you get that. And let's just say you don't have that. Let's say you are accustomed to parents looking at their screens instead of their phones. Then when you're confronted as a teenager with body comparison, you have no foundation and you absolutely crumble. So it is completely detrimental and catastrophic to somebody's sense of value. Now, to your point there when you put down your phone, the difference is if my daughter, I'm going to replay that scene. If my daughter came to me, "Hey, Dad, I want to talk to you." And I said, "Honey, absolutely. But can I do something first? Can I go put this phone away? Can I put this phone out of sight?" So that is the message to her. And it's a bit of that summary is on the earth right now, there are 8 billion people about. theoretically, every one of them could reach me through that phone if they had my phone number. So what I'm telling her is, Gianna, that's my daughter's name, Gianna, there are 8 billion people in the world, all of whom can reach me on this. I'm going to make sure that they're totally shut out so that you get all my focus. You are more important than every one of them. What does that do for a child's sense of worth and value? And here's what's cool. We hear from RO members all the time that their children make comments to them. They say, you know, for me, and then there's a guy named Mike in Encinitas, California, who emailed us and he said, my daughter, the other day we watched a movie and she said, Dad, this is the first time we've ever watched a movie and you haven't had your phone. What a cool story that she noticed. They noticed at a very young age. Talked to another guy the other day in Michigan, fellow Michigander. He was saying, he said that his 2-year-old, because he was on his phone, his 2-year-old put his hand over the screen and just kind of growled at him. Just like it's peak frustration. So they notice these things. I'm being a little bit tangential here, but I've been thinking about this concept of when a child is born, a child is hardwired for human connection.
Yes.
A child is built for human connection, for eye contact, for touch, for all of those things. And then they don't know, I'm trying to think how to say this exactly the right way. They're not hardwired for screens and electronics. And so something unnatural intersects with what they're built for. And they don't know what to do with it. A child doesn't know what to do with it, but they will grow conditioned very, very quickly. So the opportunity for all of us as parents, especially with young kids, is to play into their hardwiring and develop that connection and be good examples and not interject that unnatural thing between you and that relationship. And if you do that, you're helping people really dwell and live into who they were meant to be and who they were born to be.
The idea that the parent to child message that's sent when you put away the phone is super powerful. I have to think that also applies to husband to wife, the spouse level, right? Same thing. You can send so many messages by what you're looking at instead of who you're looking at. The whole intentional effort part of it seems to me like it applies all through every age group and every relationship.
Well, it's the spousal relationship is a really interesting one. I saw a funny Instagram post the other day. It said something like modern marriage is telling your spouse they're on their phone too much in the few minutes that you're not on your phone yourself. And so it's, you know, we're conditioning ourselves. We're on our phones too much. And again, I think that if everybody, I believe we're all about intentionality, and I define a distraction as anything that gets in the way of your intentions. So I would say that most people, I would venture to say that every person who's married that's listening to The Big Impact right now wants to be present for their spouse, wants to have a good marriage. Their intention is that. But that gets sidetracked. That gets kind of intersected with this phone, and the phone is the main culprit of that potential distraction that gets in the way of our intentions for ourselves. And so we just kind of lack that system. I'll take it a step further, and I know this is a family show, but I think this is safe territory. If you're out on a date, my co-founder Heath Wilson says this all the time. He goes, if I'm out on a date with my wife, he goes, and my phone is sitting face up on the table, he goes, I might as well not even be there. Because, and this is back, Dr. Maxie Heitmeyer says that the presence of your phone equals interaction with your phone, equals use of your phone, whether your screen is on or off. This is really interesting, Bill, because when your phone is there and your screen is up, or even when your screen is down, that equals usage of your phone because you're anticipating something from your phone. All it takes is a buzz, all it takes is a ding, or maybe even worse, even if it's on silent, it's like the Schrodinger's cat. You're thinking, okay, well, what's happening? What's happening now? Did someone text me? Is there an email in? And so you're actually interacting with it just by it being there. So back to the date. So phone is face up. I might not as well be there. You turn it over. That's a little bit better. But then Heath says, if I hand my phone to his wife at dinner, he says, I'm probably going to get lucky that night. Excuse me, that's a little too crass. Feel free to edit that if you need to. But because, and I say that crassly, you know, and tongue in cheek, but what it does, it will build intimacy because, again, if you make a display out of it, you are saying to them, you're more important than this phone. Our 40 minutes right here, especially if you're busy. A lot of people say, well, I need my phone all the time. You probably do. There are people who need it. but I bet that we can go 40 minutes without it. And that 40 minutes alone, because we're not all about a digital detox, we're just finding those carving out spaces for it. If you did that, I guarantee anybody, and test me right now, anybody listening right now, try it for 40 minutes once a week, period. That's it. Family dinners are better. Overnights are better. We can talk about a lot of the other stuff and how it can impact your life. But just go on a date or go on the back porch, have some iced tea or glass of wine, whatever your preference is, with your spouse, and hand your phone to them or put your phone away and tell them you're doing it, because it's such a message to them that they are important. And that's what spouses, we have, with Aura, we have very few returns, which is great, but we have had 2 within the last month that have really troubled me. And we can go into what Aura is, so it may require a little more context, but it's troubled me because a wife has said, I brought this into our home, but I couldn't get my husband on board, 2 of them. And it breaks my heart because I think I want to go talk to that husband and say, you may not realize it right now, but your wife really just made an effort for some intimacy. She said the reason she brought it in was there's something getting in the way of some relationship, whether it's for your kids or between the 2 of you. So she's placed a bid and hoping that you're going to pick up on it. And it's an opportunity for you to pick up on that. So I would love it if husbands were the ones that initiated this more. The husbands were the one that said, hey, listen, I brought this into our home, not for you, honey, but for me to use so that I can give my full presence to you. So it's, I have a couple of friends who've called me with some, marital issues. That's what happens when you get in your early to mid 40s. You hit some bumps. And I said to both of them, I said to the first one, I said, hey, listen, I bet you about 30% of the issues right now relate to you having your phone with you all the time. And he disagreed. He said, no, I think it's about 60%.
Wow.
I said, okay, all right. So I said, buddy, let's just do this. Just tonight when you get home, here's a cool thing. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Just when you get home tonight, just put it down. Just put it away. Tell your family you're doing that and just see what happens.
What's interesting, Joey, is that through all of this conversation to this point, you really haven't focused on the content of what we're watching or consuming through these devices. Yeah. It's the intent, not the content.
That's good, Bill. I like that.
It's what you're doing with it and the messages you're sending. And you really, I'm sure you've done the research, but you really haven't spent any time talking about what we're bringing in. It's what we're sending out. And I'm sure we could do hours and hours upon the things that our kids are absorbing because they've been turned over to YouTube and all the stuff that's just algorithm based on their interests and the messages that are sent to our 13-year-old girls through Instagram and all the different things. But the intent versus the content, it's remarkable to me that it's as much related, I think, to what we're seeing as to what we're saying through the use of it all.
That is super insightful. I don't know that I haven't thought about it in those terms, and it's true. We got a lot of work to do for all of us. And I'll use maybe the terrible metaphor. I'm not sure, but let's say that I needed to get someone said, hey, I want you to go run 5 miles. Or let's say a marathon. No, let's say 5 miles, because that's doable, but it's hard. So someone said, I want you to run 5 miles. That would be tough to get a good time. And then let's say they handed me a boulder along with it. And I said, well, I'm not going to be able to do this. I feel like what we're trying to do as parents, we're trying to run a marathon. Being a good parent is really hard. But we're trying to do it carrying a boulder, and that's our phone with us at all times. It requires intention and attention, and it requires everything from us. We're trying to do these difficult things carrying a boulder. And when you drop the boulder, it's not going to make the hard thing less hard. It's just a prerequisite to getting in. So in the same way, we really need to focus absolutely on the content and what our kids are seeing. And there are really good resources out there, but we got to address this core relationship first. If a kid has their phone overnight, by the way, I can't imagine if I would have had access to the internet as a teenage boy overnight. It would have been, I wouldn't have slept ever.
Yeah. None of us would.
Yeah. And that's not even to get into all the nefarious stuff. There's some terrible stuff out there. That's just sleep deprivation. I would have done much worse in school. There would have been a lot of things that would have been impacted there. But I love your point there. we should focus on both. It's not one or the other. Our goal at RO, our goal is to help you with that intention and that building the relationship, which always begins on how we're modeling it to the next generation. And then for sure, we need to go focus on the content, and there are great people out there that are doing that. But I don't know that's at least much less effective unless we have a positive, healthy relationship with our phone.
Well, one of the ways that you're helping families with that is with the device, the hard goods that you and your partners have developed. And I don't want to mangle the description of it, so I'll kind of turn the platform over to you because I would undersell it by saying it is a high-tech storage box for your family, but that's not exactly the sizzle reel that you're looking for. So fill us in.
Well, it's we've designed RO to be a platform for the whole family that makes it easy to put down your phone.
RO,
ARO. And so we've designed that to make it easy to put down your phone. And the way we're doing that is we're combining a place for your phone, this beautiful hardware piece that lives in your home, where you place your phone and it connects to an app. So it's the marriage between the two, an app that reminds you to spend some time away from your phone. It gamifies the experience of being away from your phone. It's actually using all the tips and tricks that the social media companies have used to put us on our phone, and it's using those to gamify the experience of being away from your phone. So science will tell us that the only way to reduce your phone usage is for it to be out of your visual field of sight and for it to be away from your body. Which, if you don't have in other words, if you don't have your phone, you're not going to use it. And I'll say the inverse of that. If I have my phone, I am going to use it. So it is true. We have to get it away from us. But the market right now is not lacking. We don't lack shoeboxes and drawers and places to put our phone. So yet, 91% of us have our phone on us all the time. So the issue is not necessarily the place to put it. The issue is a system that gets us to that. We like a good habit system. So back to James Clear in Atomic Habits, he talks about the habit loop. So it begins with a cue, a visual cue. So this thing lives in your home, and it's that visual reminder that, oh yeah, my intentions are to spend some time fully present with my family. Or it's the app that's nudging you proactively that's saying, hey, Bill, it's time for dinner. It's dinner time. Or, hey, Bill, time to spend some time away from your phone. So it's that cue, which leads you down to that craving response, the thing you want to do, and then actually putting your phone down, making it easy to put down your phone. And that automatic connection with the app and tracking your time away is the really interesting part. We found that people get a Sunday screen time report from Apple that shows how much time you've been on your phone. That's not actionable, and it's not really motivating either because there's no real context for it.
Nor is it accurate.
Yeah, exactly. Because some of that time it could be using Waze, and it could be, it's not actual interaction by phone, so it's a little misleading. Yeah. And so we're showing you how much time you've intentionally been away from your phone. So that feels good because any amount of time away from your phone is good. That feels good. Some people say I want 20 minutes a day. Some people say I want to go screen time neutral. And they say I spend 3 hours on my phone. I want 3 hours away from my phone. And that's a fun goal too. So whatever your motivation may be, it feels good. And then what you can do, it's almost like a fitness style app where you can tag what you've done. So if I pulled out my screen, my RO report right now, I could tell you exactly how much time I've spent in morning devotions over the last 30 days. I can tell you exactly how much time we've had family dinners. I can tell you how much time I've used it while working. So that feels really, really good. And when something feels good, you're going to repeat it again. And so you start building in these healthy rhythms, and then you wrap in the family with it, and you have leaderboards, and you make it competitive, and you make it fun, or you set a goal together, or some parents even use it as an allowance incentive for their kids. Hey, hit this much time every day, or hit these streaks, or whatever that is, and they use it as incentive for their kids. So the whole system is designed with one goal in mind, is to make it easy to put down your phone. And that's the goal. And we tell people this is not a commercial in any way for RO. This is just the holistic discussion on a relationship with your phone. We tell people all the time, if you can do this on your own, please do it. Bill, I can go burn calories for free on my own by running and doing push-ups, but I still belong to a gym because I need a little bit of help. I need an environment. I need accountability. What I need is a removal of the friction that gets in the way of doing something difficult. And a lot of us don't take this issue quite seriously enough because it seems so very easy. Oh, just put down your phone. Yeah. In the same way, oh, just run a couple miles every day and eat well. That's a little bit, that's easier said than done, all of those things. And so where we find the value, and we can talk about what's at stake here in a minute, but when we find the value in doing something, we'll go to whatever lengths we need to accomplish that and really, really line up our actions with our intentions.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, speaking of what's at stake, I'm thinking of those conversations that I've had now that my wife and I are empty nesters. We've started connecting with younger families that have kids at home, whether we're related to them or we happen to know them through church or whatever. And I can't tell you how many times we hear, man, I know I only have a few years left with him in the home. He's 14 or she's 13. And they're starting to feel this anxiety that's leading up to the end of high school. And then who knows, maybe they'll be home much longer than you wanted, but theoretically you might be nearing the end of your time with traditional, parent-child stuff. I just wish that we could slow this time down. I wish that we could make time stop, and you feel like, yeah, and yet at the same time, we have handed over to the non-family, often godless parts of our culture. We've handed over to them the time we wish we had with our own kids. And we have said to the Disney Channel, and we have said to Netflix, and we have said to YouTube's, hey, can you guys just take this for a couple hours? Yeah. And all of a sudden, those couple hours are at light speed, and you're attending a graduation and helping somebody pack up and head off to college, and you start wondering, is my son ready for what he's going to face on that campus? I sure hope so. Well, if that preparation was all handled by the YouTubes of the world, then there's a very real possibility that he or she is not as equipped as you had prayed for them for years. You're praying for your kids, you're praying for your grandkids, and yet we're outsourcing the moral education and the integrity instruction to people who have none of either. Yeah, because of the device struggle. So I'm 100% with you, Joey. And if I were out speaking on this topic, I would say to everybody, you need to look at RO. You need to invest in it. It looks like a box. It's a whole lot more. And I'm sure you are hearing some really cool stories of families that are moving in a super positive direction because of the creation that your team has come up with.
Yeah, that's the fun part. When he texted me, over 4 years ago with this idea, as we were in the early stages, we said, hey, can you imagine? We dreamt about the day. Can you imagine when we start hearing stories of families being impacted, relationships being mended? And so the stories we get are literally dreams come true when we hear these stories. So there was a woman named Cassie in Kansas who emailed us a few weeks ago. And she told a story. She said she was putting her 11-month-old down for bed. And when she came back out, she looked everywhere around the house for her phone. Finally, she came to her 7-year-old daughter. She goes, have you seen mommy's phone? And she said, yeah, I put it in that box thingy. And, Cassie laughs and she goes, oh, why did you put it in that box thingy? Do you like it when it's there? And the daughter said, yeah, you spend more time with me when your phone's in the box thingy. So they notice. Yeah. They're young. They notice. They notice when you're there. They notice when you're not there. Sam in Chico, California emailed us and he told us that the other day, he was probably a couple months ago, he went down for breakfast and his son was sitting there before school. And so Sam had just gotten RO. So he put his phone, he would normally be scrolling, but he put his phone in RO and he said the next 17 minutes changed his life. And, intriguing. That's a pretty big statement. And we said, okay, he explained what happened in those 17 minutes. Well, they talked about sharks and they talked about how things get invented. And that was it. That was the 17 minutes. But Sam had a light bulb go off, and he said, what if I did this every day for the rest of my son's life? Because here's something that a lot of us have heard, but maybe not fully internalized. By the time our kids are 12 years old, we will have spent 75% of the time we will spend with them for their entire lives. By the time they're 18 years old, we will have spent 90% of the time we'll spend with them. So here's what that means in practical terms for me. My son is about to turn 15. So that means by the stats that until he leaves for college over the next several years, I have about 40 days left with him in aggregate. 40 days.
Wow.
So if someone came to me and said, let's take the screens out. Let's just say someone came to me, some heavenly messenger came to me and said, hey, you have 40 days left with Harrison. I would fall to my knees. I would crumble. I would sob, and I would beg for another hour. Give me another hour, please. They said, well, actually, we can actually double that time for you. But you have to do something drastic. Yes, of course, anything. Well, you can't look at emails or texts or the ESPN app on nights and weekends. That would be the biggest no-brainer in my entire life, right?
Right.
Because it sounds so silly. But let me tell you, this is not a dramatization. We all have this opportunity in front of us today, beginning today, just by doing that. If we could take back 6 to 9 o'clock at night, that would change the world, all of us. And so it's not an over-dramatization. I know I'm getting a little worked up about it, but it's not an over-dramatization. This is not something theoretical. This is the message. I said a messenger could come to me and tell you that. I'm telling you right now because I wish someone had come to me a decade ago and said this and shaken me and said, you have no idea how fast the years are going to go, but you have to do these small things on a daily basis, and it will absolutely change the way you interact, and then the way you talk about that, the look back, and then the look back you had and say, I did it all. I was there. And that feels good. And you don't look back with any regrets, because the worst thing you can have is regrets. Instead, you can look and say, I got everything out of that relationship. I gave everything I could with my kids. I feel confident in sending them off. I feel great inside about that. And I've had a wonderful amount of time with them up until this point.
So if you all listening have not been challenged and inspired by this, I don't know what to do. Maybe you've been looking at something on your phones at the same time. I'm not sure. Joey, where do people go to learn more and to maybe get their hands on and get subscribed to RO?
Yeah, and please go to goaro.com. It's GOARO.com. And you can check it out. If you have questions, just email support@goaro.com. A lot of people will have questions about it, about how the system works. And I make a promise to anybody who joins RO. So it's a monthly membership. You get the hardware device along with it. It's a monthly membership, but I make a promise, and I make a promise to everybody listening. If you use RO every single day, you put your phone on the RO home device every day, and if you leverage the app, like I mentioned, that app is built around the science of habit formation. If you do those things every day, it will change your life. And I know that because it's changed my life. And I know that because when you change your relationship with your phone, change your relationship with everyone around you. So do it for yourself, do it for your marriage, do it for your kids. And here's why we should do it for our kids. Because if we don't do something, if we just sit idly by, if we don't do something, this generation of kids on Instagram and TikTok, if we don't do something, this generation of kids will be the first generation of kids who will die with more of other people's memories than memories they've created on their own. I'm not okay with that. I bet no one listening is okay with that. I know you're not okay with that, Bill. And the cool thing is, we have this wonderful opportunity. This is the greatest opportunity we have right now, right at our fingertips. So it's hopeful. It's a great message, and we can actually change the world by this simple act.
Man, I'm so glad that we were able to connect and that we had more than 9 minutes to dig into this. I really thank you for your time. I have a final thought for those of you who are involved in churches and in ministry. This is not, I'm not trying to sound like the old man yelling, "Get off my lawn." I promise. I am far too invested in technology. I need to do a number of the things that Joey has suggested. So please know that I say this from a position of love and total understanding. But pastors, stop reading your church announcements from your phone on the platform.
Wow.
Bring a piece of paper up. Don't let me see you pull your phone out of your pocket on the platform, because you don't want me doing that in the church, even though my Bible may be on my phone. Take them off the platform. Sure, preach your sermon from your iPad. That's a different story. But when you're coming out to tell us about the bake sale next Thursday night, you don't need to read it. When it's time for you to pray, you don't need to read your prayer. Just pray to the Lord, but just keep your phone in your pocket. We have got to start from within the church. We have got to start conveying the proper place and time for these things. Because if I'm the 11-year-old girl sitting in the sanctuary and my mom has just said, "You're on your phone too much." I look up and I say, "Well, Pastor Bill's on his." So we've got to start doing this from the inside out. And the inside would be, we care about your family. We're invested in your family. We preach intentional actions to heal and to help your family. So let's follow through in this category as well. That's my encouragement to those of you who are involved in church ministry. And Joey, I don't know, are you traveling and speaking on this stuff? Is this part of your world?
Absolutely. Yeah, we are. No, please do reach out on to go to RO, support at GoRO.com, and we can arrange that. And we love talking about it. It's a passion, something that we're all on a journey with. It's not from a place it's not from a place of authority or not that I've, accomplished all this, but, I press on type of thing. We're the chief of sinners. We've gone through it. We empathize. We're all on a different continuum. We love talking about it. And, because we do believe in the hope that there is here.